1987. That's the year that JoJo's was first published in Shonen Jump. With over 1,000 chapters of manga, a beloved anime adaptation, JoJo's has been force-fed down everybody's throats. I'm being serious. Under every anime Twitter thread, there is some outdated-ass meme of Dio in the replies. I'm sick of it, you're sick of it, let's do better, JoJo's fandom. With a series this prolific, it's obvious that it wasn't gonna stop with just one series. There's live-action movies, TV shows, manga spin-offs, Gucci ads. Where does it stop?
I don't know the answer to that question, but I do know that I've spent the past 3 weeks reading every single one of them. I need to make up the lost time somehow. So here's a video essay.
For this list, I thought we would start from the well-known and work our way down to obscurity. This is the spinoff that most of you probably already know about. It was the only one I knew about because it constantly came up on my Netflix when I forgot to turn my TV off, along with other things. Anyways, if you haven't heard of it, here is the premise. It's basically just a bunch of one-shot manga chapters that were eventually condensed down into a single book. There's no overarching story between the chapters, so we really just get Rohan narrating over 8 different scary bedtime stories. But when I say scary, I actually mean it. Let me explain it by giving you a little personal tangent. I started JoJo's with the anime, and I often wondered how differently I would perceive this story if I had started with the manga. I say this because before the 2014 anime debut, JoJo's was a series that was largely considered to be unadaptable. The manga was too weird, too unordinary to fit into the traditional anime style at the time. That is, until David Studios gave it their shot. It was colorful, it was completely faithful, and most importantly, it made it palatable for even the most casual anime fans to enjoy. It's what JoJo's is at heart. It's fun. It takes its lack of seriousness seriously. But I think because of this translation, you unfortunately lose a certain feeling you get while reading Araki's work. I can best describe that feeling as unsettling. Now, this might not be Araki's actual intention, but when you strip back all of the color from a typical JoJo's episode and replace the clean line work with like a more detail-oriented art style, the feeling suddenly changes from lighthearted fun to creepy. And these stories only amplify that quality of his work. Episode 9, The Run, begins with a young dude just trying to make it in the modeling business. Not that kind of come on! Anyways, bro was watching a few too many Liver King videos and got obsessed with the gains. And maybe steroids too, because I mean, look at this dude's build. Joe, what's your take on this?
That guy's on the sauce, 100%.
Thanks, Joe. My thoughts exactly. Rohan eventually gets involved in the story and challenges the guy to a running competition. Greek gods are mentioned, and I won't spoil the rest. This is an episode that I feel goes above and beyond David Studios' traditional interpretations of the manga. And while it's not perfect, this is that unsettling feeling you get from reading Araki's work. These animated facial expressions during the final moments of their competition, the comping choices with this black smog-like effect on the outside of the window. These are the things that build that truly terrifying, unsettling feeling you get from reading the manga. The actual content of the story is so absurd, but somehow you don't think twice about it once you've fallen into this entrancing buildup. You forget the fact that this man installed an entire rock climbing facility in his 700 square foot apartment just 3 pages ago because you're so invested in seeing what this monster will become. While we get awesome moments like this in the regular runtime of the anime, I feel like this story in particular gave David Studios the opportunity to experiment on a much larger scale. I want to make a full-fledged video essay on what David Studios did to adapt JoJo's so well, so I'll stop there for now. Let me know if you guys want to see a video like that in the comments. But before we move on to the next spin-off, here are some of my other favorites from this collection. Episode 4, The Harvest Moon, follows a family who suffers from a generational curse that causes them to die on the same day every year. And Poaching Village, which is a manga exclusive for now, but it has Tonio lore in it. So go read it. To keep with the chart theme, we were here, but we're already moving our way down to no man's land. I'll keep updating this as the video goes on. Deadman's Questions is kind of a spin-off manga, but also like a pseudo continuation of part 4, and it features none other than Yoshikage Kira. This was a short run, but not the shortest one that I read. It only clocked in at about 3 chapters total, and it follows Kira after the events of part 4, navigating the world as a ghost. You see, Araki adds a new layer of supernaturalness to the world of JoJo's, and this time in the form of a ghost dimension. Yep, you heard that right, a new dimension. Minecraft can't even fucking do that. They can build a portal, but they're not gonna do anything with it for the next 3. I'm sorry. I'm very passionate about Minecraft. Anyways, in this spin-off, Kira becomes a supernatural hit-for-hire assassin after forgetting everything that happened in his past life. By making this job his entire purpose in life, he hopes that he will truly find happiness. And to make those fat ghost rags, baby, come on, who gonna pay for these supernatural strippers? Absolutely kidding. But you may be wondering, why the fuck do ghosts need money? Well, I guess to understand that, we're gonna need a quick lesson on world building. World building is the process of constructing an imaginary world with coherent qualities such as history, geography, and ecology. I had to include the Google definition if I wanted to qualify as a YouTube scholar. When you think of stories like One Piece or Berserk, you often think of the world they're set in before the characters or the plot. This is because the world that these stories take place in are as equally integral to the plot as the characters are. They give motivations to their stories through environments, laws, and magic. But how do they do it without the reader even noticing? Let's look at the Water 7 arc in One Piece, for example. Slight spoilers ahead. Nothing major, but if you'd like to skip, here's the timestamp. I'll make this quick, then we can get right back into JoJo's. This island was built into the sea, which gives it a completely fresh setting compared to everything else we've seen so far. But it also gives us complications. You see, every year an event called Aqua Laguna occurs, which floods the entire city, leaving its residents trapped indoors waiting for the water level to decrease. It provides personality and depth to the world, but it also pushes the plot further. During the lead up to the flood, the Straw Hats were faced with the task of rescuing a kidnapped crewmate from a corrupt government. While already an urgent moment, the flood acts as another layer of tension to their chase. If they don't get on the last train out in time, chances are their crewmate would be dead by the time the flood subsides. I am criminally underselling this moment in the sake of keeping spoilers low, so if you haven't seen One Piece, just go watch it already. But this is a JoJo's video. Enough talking about me. Since Deadman's Question is already a part of the JoJo's universe, its focus really isn't on environmental world building. In fact, Araki doesn't tend to build his worlds with environments first anyways. Instead, he focuses on something called rules. Where One Piece excels in building its world physically, Deadman's Questions builds its ghost world in rules. At the beginning of the second chapter, we see a scene where Kira grabs money he's been keeping in a broken vending machine. Then, he buys a train ticket with it. Why the fuck does he need a train ticket? He's a ghost. You're right. He throws the ticket away and boards his empty seat on the train. To him, that's his reserved seat. But to others, that person just never showed up. 3 panels, and so much serotonin gets dumped into my brain. It follows every rule. It answers a question you forgot even existed. Why do ghosts need money? To buy a train ticket, I guess. But it goes deeper than that. In the first chapter, we were shown Kira's body being ripped apart for phasing through this living person, thus showing us yet another rule. Ghosts can't phase through people without consequences. That's why ghosts need money. Because they share the world with the living, but they adhere to a different set of rules. He buys a train ticket and throws it away for a reason, so he won't face the consequences of phasing through the living. This single action answers questions we forgot about and builds depth to the world. That's the kind of storytelling that makes Araki's work such a joy to consume. And yes, I did commit this entire segment to a scene that consisted of 3 panels. I told you I'd keep you updated on the whiteboard, and this time I have drawn an iceberg. As you can see, I've placed us here on the scale, somewhere between level 4 and 5. Crazy Diamond's Demonic Heartbreak. This was the first true spin-off I had read for this video because Araki had almost no hand in writing it. Apparently, he had an idea for a story set between part 3 and 4 that revolved around Josuke and Whole Horse. Did you say Whole Horse? Was there an error in the fucking script or something? Well, it's 2023 and that idea exists now. Only caveat, it wasn't written or illustrated by him. This story was actually written by Kohei Kodono, who was primarily a light novel author before this, and Tatsuki Karasuma did the illustrations to bring this manga to life. And let me tell you, it was fucking weird seeing a full-fledged JoJo manga not in Araki's style. I ended up really liking the illustrations by the end of it, but it was still weird. The story follows separate but intertwined stories from 4 different characters. Whole Horse is trying to retrieve Pet Shop's lesser-known brother, Josuke is just kind of along for the ride, and Boingo is trying to get Toph back. I feel bad because Boingo is kind of included in the story just so Toph could be in it, but don't tell him that. And that 4th secret character is Ryoko Kakyoin. Kakyoin's never mentioned first cousin. And she also just happens to be the most interesting character in the entire manga. Let me explain. Ryoko is plagued by guilt for Kakyoin's death. A sequence of flashbacks play depicting Kakyoin standing up to Dio in order to protect Ryoko. As history goes, Kakyoin gets put under Dio's spell by Fleshblood and returns to Japan. While we know what happens to Kakyoin next, Ryoko doesn't. Just a few months later, she gets news of Kakyoin's death and places all of the blame on herself. As the reader, we know that this was Kakyoin's chance to build confidence and find meaningful relationships with people. We know Kakyoin had a happy ending, but to his family, they just know their child is deceased. This is the story of the aftermath of part 3 told by people outside the Stardust Crusaders. The way these stories are intertwined with each other and almost rely on each other is what made me enjoy this manga despite its other faults. Because Ryoko wasn't there for the events of part 3, she has to rely on Toph to get her answers. Whole Horse is the only one who knows of the Stardust Crusaders and therefore is the only one who can help her. Easy enough, but knowing Whole Horse, he's hesitant to bring up his past. This is because throughout the manga, we see him fighting the residual influence of Dio, and he has to go through his own character development before he can help others. It creates this dynamic of suspense in which you have to care about every single character in the story instead of just picking a favorite. Something I think Araki actually struggled with in some of his earlier works. While this manga's main sell is the Josuke and Whole Horse duo, I would argue that the story really isn't about them at all. Whole Horse has the Dio's curse dilemma, but Josuke doesn't really have a discernible character arc at all. Maybe shoot for the stars, and maybe you'll land yourself a cougar. Before we move on to the next spinoff I read, can we talk about how the fuck this fits in between part 3 and 4? I thought Josuke found out what stands were at the beginning of part 4. What is this continuity? To finalize the iceberg here, we moved up a couple levels and we are actually this little boat here. Don't mind that little submarine, what? For the final 3, I decided to group them together in a segment that I call Art House, or undercover advertising.
Araki, I get it. I do my fair share of advertisements too. Okay, we gotta get the bag somehow. Pound it, brother.
The last 3 that I read are Rohan Goes to Gucci, Jolene Fly High with Gucci, and Rohan Goes to the Louvre. The Gucci collab signaled to me that it was time to lay belly down on a bed, kicking my feet in the air because god damn, these pictures are pretty. Oh god! Oh my! Araki, what did you do to Okoyasu's face? While the actual content of these may be far too pretentious for me to understand, much like the fashion houses themselves, the full color illustrations in these are absolutely stunning. stunning. The standout of these has to be Rohan Goes to the Louvre, and it's kind of unfair to compare it to the other two. Rohan Goes to the Louvre is like triple the length of both of the Gucci collabs, and let me tell you, it uses its time well. It's chock full of incredible artwork and presents an interesting story of a young Rohan just starting his mangaka journey. Part horror, part romance, Araki really wanted to make a good first impression at the Louvre. But if I have to be honest, the other two Gucci collabs really did nothing for me. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. You see, I don't think these installments were meant to be taken out of the context of just being a cool advertisement. I think just being based in the JoJo's universe and being dubbed a spin-off inherently adds so much weight to the project. If you take Rohan Goes to the Louvre, for example, this is just a garnish to a dish that we already like. But then you look at something like Deadman's Questions, which opens far more questions than it answers. Why did he choose to focus on Kira specifically in his afterlife? Did he feel like this character just didn't get the resolution he needed? Did Araki just come off of a Ghostbusters watch party bender? The world will never know. And honestly, I've come to the conclusion that it doesn't really matter. A lot of times it just feels like he wants to experiment with an idea he had and not have it be under the scrutiny of a mainline part. He wants to show the world his work without showing the world his work. Artists have tons of ideas that they never share with the public. So I think it's cool that sometimes we get a little scope into what Araki is thinking at the time. And I think that is literally all I can take away from these spin-off series.